Honourable Muwodzeri. Muwodzeri. Please proceed.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I rise to address this august House in opposition to the Constitution Amendment Bill number 3, 2026. I do so conscious of the gravity that attaches to any proceeding which seeks to alter the supreme law of this land. The Constitution is not just a legislative instrument, it is the covenant between the state and its citizens. The foundation architecture of our republic, the embodiment of the aspirations of the people who fought, bled, and sacrificed the sovereign self-determination. A social contract between the people of this land. To amend it is to amend it properly, a constitutional betrayal of the people. Mr. Speaker, I have studied the report of the Joint Portfolio Committees laid before this House, and I commend the committee for the diligence it has brought to process this constitutional magnitude. Mr. Speaker, sir, I begin with commendation for the only right that where the committee has been correct, this House should say so loudly. Mr. Speaker, the committee's commendation on clause 21 should not be adopted, and that status quo on the political neutrality of traditional leaders should be preserved. It is constitutionally sound and democratically principled and worth of praise. Section 281 of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, read together with Section 163(1)(f) of 165(4)(a) and 283(c)(5) establishes a coherent and deliberate constitution scheme. The scheme is premised on a fundamental truth that traditional leaders serve communities, not political parties. Amen. They are the custodians of the customary law and communal justice. They preside over matters of inheritance, land allocation, and community dispute resolution in their capacity as judicial officers under our constitutional framework. To permit them to engage openly in partisan political activity is not just ignorance, it is a constitutional contradictory. Mr. Speaker, sir, Section 165(4) imposes upon judicial officers a duty of impartiality that is non-negotiable. Traditional leaders who exercise judicial functions cannot simultaneously hold political allegiance without destroying the neutrality upon which the legitimacy of their judicial role depends. A chief who campaigns for a political party at a rally on Saturday cannot credibly adjudicate a boundary dispute between a ruling party supporter and an opposition member on Monday. Mr. Speaker, the Constitution understood this, the committee has understood this, and the House must understand it. Yes. Furthermore, in the rural communities where traditional authorities most deeply felt, political partisanship by chiefs creates conditions ripe for coercion, intimidation, and the prosecution of political minorities. Amen. The villagers who are most dependent on the goodwill of traditional structures for access to land and communal resources would be rendered most vulnerable. The committee must correct to reject this clause, and the House should affirm that rejection with resounding vote to say no. Mr. Speaker, I now turn to a matter of physical logic and institutional coherence, specifically the proposal to establish yet another constitutional commission, the Zimbabwe Delimitation Commission. The committee, in recommending the adoption of the clauses 11, 12, and 13, has accepted the argument that specialized boundary drawing board is necessary. Mr. Speaker, I reject that reasoning. Yes. We are a nation that struggles to fund constitutional commissions it already possesses. the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission, the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission, the Zimbabwe Gender Commission, institutes established under 12 of the Constitution, which the promise of adequate resource or operate in state chronic underfunding. The committee itself in clause 18-19 had testimony from the Zimbabwe Gender Commission. It operates on a mere 0.02% to 0.04% of the national budget. That is physical reality in which we live. And yet, Mr. Speaker said, the proponents of this bill ask this nation to create another commission with its own secretariat, its own commissioner, and its deputy commissioners in its office, its own office, infrastructure, its own operational budget, its own staff establishment, and its own procurement requirements to perform the function of that section 161 of the Constitution is already invested in ZEC, and which ZEC has institutional competence and existing capacity to perform. If the concern is that ZEC delimitation exercise have been imperfect, the answer is to reform. Resourcing and enhancing accountability, not the proliferation of constitution bodies. Every new commission is a new line item on the national budget. Every new commission is a new bureaucracy. Every new commission creates new patronage. Mr. Speaker said, a nation that cannot properly fund the commissions, it has should not be created commissions it does not need. Amen. Mr. Speaker, additionally, the committee has corrected not necessity for what it described as meticulous coordination between ZEC and proposed delimitation commission. It put into this house, if the two bodies must coordinate so closely, what precisely is the utility of their separation? You have taken one institution, split into two, double the administrative costs, and called it efficiency. This is institutional manipulation masquerading as reform. Yes. Mr. Speaker, the proposed transfer of voter registration and maintenance of voters roll from the ZEC to Registrar General represents one of the most constitutionally alarming provisions in this bill. The House must not have a short memory. The very reason voter registration was removed from the Registrar General and placed in ZEC was institutional credibility. The voters' role under the Registrar General was to use the most restrained available language, the subject to profound public concern regarding manipulation, partisan management, and executive interference. ZEC was established under Section 238 of the Constitution as an independent constitutional commission precisely to insult the electoral process from the executive end. The Shona have a saying, Section 235(1)(b) of the Constitution mandates that independent commissions must be independent and must not be subject to the direct or control of anyone. The Registrar General is a government department. It is headed by a public servant who answers to the minister, who answers the president. There is no constitutional independence whatsoever. To invest the voters' role, the very instrument of electoral participation in such a body is to subordinate the right to vote to executive discretion. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, it has on record opposed this transfer. ZEC has invested substantially in biometric voter registration systems and a poll-based voting architecture introduced in 2018. They are not rival investments. They represent national infrastructure of electoral integrity. To dismantle and transfer the infrastructure to a body with no equivalent technical capacity, no equivalent constitutional independence, and no equivalent track record in biometric electoral management is to trade institutional advancement for institutional regression. This is not efficient. This is executive capture dressed in administrative language. The argument that the model reduces electoral violence in admission of institutional failure, not a constitutional solution, If our presidential elections are violent, if the presidential elections are violent, the answer is to elect a reform, strengthened law enforcement and the prosecution of perpetrators of electoral violence. The answer is not to remove the vote from the citizenry altogether. You do not cure electoral violence by abolishing elections. Mr. Speaker, clauses 4 and 9, 10 propose the extension of the electoral cycle from 5 to 7 years with explicit application to the incumbent holder of the office of the President of members of the Parliament. On this point, the Constitution speaks with unmistakable clarity. Section 328 of 7 provides in express terms that any amendment to a provision of the Constitution that extends the term of office of the President shall not apply to the person who holds the office at the moment the amendment is done. That provision is not ambiguous. It admits no judicial interpretation that would permit its circumvention. It was placed in the Constitution as a deliberate safeguard against precisely the kind of term manipulation that has disfigured so many African constitutions. Section 328 of 7 is not a preference, it is a prohibition of what we see being attempted in this august house. Mr. Speaker said, the Parliament can amend the Constitution, but the Parliament cannot amend a Constitution provision by passing an amendment that violates the very terms of the provision. An amendment in breach of Section 328(7) is not only political questionable, it is a constitutionally void and ab initio. A Parliament that purports to pass it and executive that purports to benefit from it are acting in defiance of the supreme law of the land. Whatever view the House can, this House takes as desirably of 7-year terms as a matter of policy, I have strong reservations even on that score. The application of those terms to be incumbent president is constitutionally impermissible. The committee has failed to address this with seriousness it demands. The House must not repeat that failure and again vote emphatically no on this amendment. The functions of the Defense Forces, clause 16. Mr. Speaker said, I come now to what I regard as most constitutionally dangerous provision in the entire bill of clause 16, which proposes to amend section 212 of the Constitution governing the function of the Defense Forces. Section 212 of the current Constitution mandates that the Defense Forces of Zimbabwe exist to defend Zimbabwe. To protect its integrity, its territory and sovereignty, and cruelly to uphold its constitution. The constitution fidelity obligation of the Defense Forces is not incidental. It is fundamental. It is what distinguishes professional defense from a partisan instrument of a political power. The amendment proposes to limit and reconfigure the functions of the Defense Forces in ways that the proponents claim will reduce undue military influence in civilian governance. Mr. Speaker said, I put it to you and to this House, this amendment does not reduce military influence in governance. What it does, what should alarm every member of this House, regardless of the political affiliation, is strip to Defense Forces of their constitutional mandate to uphold the Constitution itself. Consider what that means in practice. The obligation to uphold the Constitution is the legal basis upon which the Defense Forces may, in extremes, resist unconstitutional conduct, including unconstitutional conduct by the executive itself. It is the provision of the anchors of the military which the Constitution, rather than purely political framework, remove the obligation, and you have Defense Force whose loyalty runs not to the Constitution of Zimbabwe, but whosoever issues the command, this is dangerous. This is not a military theory, Mr. Speaker say. This is a matter of constitutional architecture. A defense force that is no longer constitutionally mandated to uphold the constitution becomes, by necessary implication, a force accountable only to its command hierarchy. Command hierarchies are appointed by and answerable to the president. The consequence of this transformation of the constitutional anchored military into an instrument of executive will. The minority submissions on this clause warned correctly that the amendment could dilute the military's fundamental commitment to uphold and protect the supreme law of the land. Mr. Speaker said, dilute is too general word. The removal of constitutional fidelity obligation does not dilute the commitment to extinguish it, the commitment it extinguishes. It converts the constitutional duty into a discretionary act. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, the argument that the amendment is necessary to prevent military interference in civilian governments is constitutionally secular. The existing constitutional framework already deleted the powers of raw and defense forces. The principle of civilian supremacy over the military is already embedded in our constitutional order. If there are instances of improper military conduct in civilian affairs...
Order, remember, you've got 2 minutes remaining.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think in 2 minutes I'll be done. Furthermore, the Speaker amendment of this necessary prevent military interference in civilian government is constitutional and secular. The existing constitutional framework already deletes the proper role of the defense forces. The principle of civilian supremacy over the military is already embedded in our constitutional order. If there is instance of improper military conduct in civilian affairs, those instances are governed by existing law, by the principles of the civilian oversight and the accountability mechanisms of Parliament itself. They are not cured by removing the constitutional foundation military loyalty to the supreme law. I say to this House with the utmost gravity, a government that disempowers its own military from the constitutional obligation to defend the constitution is a government that has something to fear from a constitutional faithful military. And a government that fears a constitutionally fearful military is a government that intends to act unconstitutionally. This House will reject clause 16 in its totality. Presidential appointment of judges, clause 15. Mr. Speaker said clause 15 proposes to invest the appointment of judges in the president to be exercised in consultation with the Judicial Service Commission. The word consultation in constitutional law carries a specific and well understood meaning. It does not mean concurrence, it does not mean approval, it does not mean president must hear the views of the JSC and in then entire free to disregard them. This is not a safeguard. It is an appearance of safeguard without the substance of one.
Order, honourable member. Unfortunately, your time is up.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the honourable member's time be extended.
I object.
I object, Mr.
Order.
Good.
Order.
Objected.
Order.
Object, Mr. Speaker,
Order.
Objected.
Order. Honourable Mshoriwa, you moved for the extension.
I moved for extension of only 5 minutes, Mr. Speaker.
So objected. Order. Who seconds?
I second.
I second.
Honourable Kapagila, you second.
Because
Thank you. Who objects?
I object. I object. I object. I object, Mr. Speaker,
Thank you. Honourable members, we have ways of dealing with these things. If somebody proposes an extension, allow the speaker to seek for a seconder, and then allow the speaker also to look for the objections if they are there. So there is an objection, unfortunately, Honourable Muwodzeri, you cannot continue. The next speaker to take the floor is Honourable Ruwa.